Fall's here. It is. That's why I love living here, the change of the seasons. Okay. Call to order the meeting of the Local Agency Formation Commission for Monday, September 9th. Please conduct the roll call.
Good morning, thank you. Commissioner Orth?
Here.
Commissioner McCowan?
Here.
Commissioner Ward?
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Here.
Commissioner Bazzani?
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio?
Here.
Chair Brown?
I am here.
And apologies from Commissioner Huff.
How about
And I'm sorry,
Carol?
Commissioner Rosenberg. Next time's gonna be
We saw you
perfect.
too.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, this is a time, number 2 on our agenda for public expression. Anyone that would like to speak on items not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to item number 3, other business. Appears there's none. So now we're on to item 4, and that is consent calendar. And I have one minor, very, very minor. On page 5, there is apostrophe after treasurer in between the S, the R and the S. And that would be under consultant selection. And it'd be the second line down. It should just have,
Thank you.
I have a, John has one, I have one.
okay.
Well, in the
Supervisor?
category of very minor on page 5 of 50 at the very top, upon motion by Treasurer Ward, and which of course you are, but I wonder if it's more
Commissioner.
appropriate Commissioner Ward.
Thank you.
Also in the past, there's been, I think Beth would put down the amount of claims that was paid in the minutes so that I can go back and see what was actually approved as opposed to what was presented. I wonder if you could do that in the future. That'd be a big help.
We can add that.
Thank you.
All righty. Any other?
I'd
Consider-
like to pull the claims.
Okay,
questions
so
on that.
we will consider the approval of the minutes first. Do we have a motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Bazzani?
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio?
Yes.
Chair Brown?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on then to the item 4B, approval of the August 2019 claims and financial report.
Yeah, I had a couple of changes on that, on the budget track, application track, the Russian River Flood Control annexation. It is 14. It looks like they put a deposit of $1,200 in, and then in August you used 244 of that deposit. The balance should be $956.
Good catch.
Also, the total down at the bottom, expense and application total for the first quarter should equal the year-to-date.
Okay, thank you.
And then, when you expensed petty cash in the past, there was a petty cash expense of $93 for the Uyghur app, I think something in the paper. Usually we expense that in the month we pay it. So that should come off their application fee too, the $93, I'd assume? Or is that something we pay for?
No, that will come off their application fees, and we had closed it for last month, so it would come onto this month.
Okay. Yeah, normally Beth, I've noticed that Beth would, or whoever was doing the bookkeeping would do it the month that it was done. Anyway, that was all I have, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the financials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comment? Seeing none, conduct the roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Bazzani,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Chair Brown.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to public hearing items, that's number 5 on our agenda. We have none for today. And then on 6, workshop items, there are none. So we're going to move forward, matters for discussion and possible action. We have 7A, and this is an informal report on tax share agreements. Uma?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report is presented for information at the request of the Commission to clarify LAFCO's role in the tax share negotiation process and what triggers the requirement for our purposes. So in short, LAFCO's role does not have a mandated role in the tax negotiation process beyond providing notification to the county assessor and the county auditor that an application has been received and that which triggers the requirement under the Revenue and Tax Code, Section 99. That section lays out the process and parties for the tax share negotiation to occur, and which ultimately results in the adoption of resolutions by both the County Board of Supervisors and the agency, the applicant agency. And that's even if the tax share agreement is zero exchange of taxes. LAFCO regulations require the resolutions in order to issue our certificate of filing, which confirms that an application has met all the submittal requirements and can be scheduled for public hearing. So that certificate of filing is what triggers, what starts LAFCO's clock with the application process, and a public hearing has to be scheduled within 90 days from that time. Without the tax share agreement, LAFCO cannot issue that certificate of filing and proceed with processing the application. So on page 20 of your agenda packet is a flow chart, and I'll go through this. It's the Revenue and Tax Code 99 layout of the process. So essentially, LAFCO would receive an application and then issue a notice of filing to the county assessor and auditor. That then starts their process for providing property values and tax rate areas, which is submitted by the assessor to the auditor. The auditor then does a breakdown of the negotiable tax and the TRA, which is the tax rate area allocation factors, and sends that to LAFCO and to the Board of Supervisors and the County Executive Officer. At that time, the Board of Supervisors would direct the negotiations to occur between the agency and the county. And the county CEO staff would then contact the agency to begin those negotiations. Once an agreement is achieved, then I think Revenue and Tax Code specifies a 60-day process period for that process to occur, and I think there are options for extension of an additional 30 days. Once that agreement is achieved, then it comes back to the Board of Supervisors for adoption or consideration and adoption of resolutions by both the Board of Supervisors and the applicant agency. And at that time, it comes back to LAFCO. The resolutions are submitted to LAFCO, and LAFCO may continue processing the application. So the negotiated share of taxes is based on a fiscal impact to the respective jurisdiction, and that's related to the transfer of like services. Revenue and Tax Code, Section 99 also provides for the preparation of a master tax share agreement. And we were lucky enough to benefit from research from a different LAFCO that was done last year regarding master tax share agreements throughout the state, and that is in your agenda packet on page, starting on page 23. A master tax share agreement is an agreement that's developed between a county and a city or cities, or a county and special districts. There are various permutations of a master tax share agreement. It can be between the county and a city, or it can be between a county and all the cities, or a county and special district. In the absence of a master tax share agreement, tax negotiations occur on a case-by-case basis. Even if a master tax share agreement is in place, it becomes the basis for the base formula that's applied by the auditor controller in development of the proposal for a tax share agreement, but then it's considered by the Board of Supervisors. And there can be agreements that can form the basis, and there can be changes to that during an individual negotiation. In preparing a master tax share agreement, agencies typically have a fiscal neutrality study prepared as the first step in that process. That pretty much concludes my presentation, although I welcome questions, and I'll do my best to answer them or to research it further.
Commissioners? Commissioner Orth?
I found this very informative, and a good portion of it could be provided to our applicants to be informative to them, and maybe we should send it to the county responsible parties just for their initials so that they see it and we all agree that this is the process and we all understand that that's what's going to happen during any annexation. It also seems to argue for our county that a master tax agreement might not be very functional. It's only a start of negotiations anyway, and we're such a small county with, 4 cities that it might not be necessary to go through that whole process. But the examples given, I think, also speak, though, to, for the cities, good examples of what kind of, it's all over the map. So anything is possible. And I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think it does tend to rely on fact-specific situations between each agency involved. And given that Mendocino County is so geographically far-flung, and the cities are pretty well separated from each other, and each have different circumstances, it probably does make sense to have a master tax sharing agreement between a county and a city, but not between the county and all cities. But that ultimately is up to the county and the cities. I really appreciate the work that went into this. There are just a couple of comments here. One, my understanding, any tax sharing agreement between a county and a city or a special district would require a 4/5 vote, is my understanding, and if that's accurate, and I think it is, that should probably be worked into the document. And then over at the top of page 18 of 50, it says, second sentence, upon annexation, an agency takes over service responsibilities for that area, which of course is true. And then it says, and negotiates for a portion of the property tax revenue. But that negotiation needs to take place prior to annexation, as is made clear elsewhere. But just for clarity, we might say for that area and prior to annexation negotiates.
Did you get that, Uma? Because I think that's a good clarification.
I did, thank you.
And then on page 21 of 50, attachment B, where it provides an example of the process, about halfway down the page, it has Board of Supervisors and approves or denies the negotiated agreement. And again, as stated elsewhere, the other affected agency must also approve. So if it's a city and a county, it would require city council. So that, needs to be clarified in the attachment. And again, I really appreciate all the work that did go into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, there on page 24, it talks about a City of Fort Bragg and Mendocino counties, I guess, tax sharing agreement expired. It was
Yes.
45-55. What's the background of that and why did it expire? Does anybody know?
I'm not totally sure about it, but I believe it had to do with possible annexation of the Harbor District area
Okay.
that they just didn't go through with back in the day, and it did have an expiration date.
So with John's comments about having a tax sharing agreement maybe between the county and the city, is that something that the board will be pursuing?
Well, if I may, the Board of Supervisors and the city have negotiated off and on for
Years.
decades on potentially having a master tax sharing agreement between the two agencies instead of a piecemeal approach that the city comes forward, we want to annex this particular area. The approach has been to attempt to come up with a master tax sharing agreement that would apply to all potential annexations involving the city and the county. Again, those negotiations haven't come to fruition. There's, I think, still an interest in trying to accomplish that, but hasn't happened yet.
Maybe this will help.
Possibly.
Okay.
Because since the last negotiations were occurring, there has been significant turnover on both the city council and the board of supervisors.
So it's political.
And actually, at the housing element public meeting that was held in Fort Bragg, the second one, and I attended that because I was on the coast for other meetings during the day. Planner for the city of Fort Bragg basically expressed that she felt that the city of Fort Bragg would be looking at annexations coming forward, and there would be more discussion.
Yeah, I would think so.
Anyway, and I think City of Willits has also expressed a desire to at least sit down and talk. And Commissioner McCowan explained about City of Ukiah and the county, and that has been a very, very long discussion that goes on and off for several decades.
I have one more comment on page 19. I like the idea that LAFCO could request as part of an application submittal a study regarding the property tax exchanged to be used as a basis for negotiating an agreement. I believe it was Anderson Valley came in, wanted to do some annexation, but there was no coming of the minds between the county and them to support them not having to come through with a deposit for an application. It'd be nice if we could at least get that kind of an agreement set in place prior to them submitting an application. I mean, as it stated here, maybe a study regarding that annexation and how it's going to be done between the tax sharing, something like that, just to eliminate the process or bring the process along, because we dealt with it a long time and all of a sudden they just pulled out, you know, and it wasted a lot of time for both parties.
Fort Bragg, or?
Talking about the Anderson Valley.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a lot of time for both sides, and then they couldn't move forward because of the tax sharing agreement. There was none.
Commissioner?
Well, the concern was if Anderson Valley got 100% of the available property
They still couldn't
tax,
do
it
it.
was a pittance. One other thing that, you know, I think it's in here by implication, but the only tax sharing agreement required for annexation applies to property tax. That's the only thing the state requires.
I made that note.
But as we see, in some cases, the jurisdictions can also reach agreement on sales tax or transient occupancy tax. And we don't have the dates of all of these agreements, but I think increasingly you're going to see interest in negotiating sales and TOT as well as property, since that's where the shift has taken place post-Prop 13. Property tax is not as important as it used to be, and sales tax has become very significant.
And so the question is, LAFCO really only looks at the property tax portion of an agreement.
Well, LAFCO only looks at, was there an agreement on tax sharing?
Right.
On that page 19, I would note that the study is called for major annexations.
Well, I know, but
So
still
you would
could be
have to
done for minors,
define
too.
minor to major, and especially as it relates to, say, a a rural fire district compared to, say, the Ukiah Valley and the Ukiah City. That I think would demonstrate major minor instances. So.
But I do believe there should be some discussion between the two agencies before it really gets to us about how the tax is going to be.
Well, and I think this makes that clear, that without even a zero-sum agreement, they're not going to get an annexation. So taking care of it early would make a lot of sense.
One last thing, how does dissolutions apply to this? Or where an agency loses territory because they're giving it up, where does the taxes go for that? And how does that play into this?
That's a good question, since we have that coming up soon. We did look into that, and there was no tax share agreement for that. There's no tax sharing of that, of property taxes for that area that we'll be addressing coming up. My understanding is that if there's a dissolution, the tax, that portion of the taxes just goes back to the base entity, which would likely be the county. But I believe you still have to go through, I believe the Revenue and Tax Code 99 is still triggered by a dissolution, and there has to be some paperwork that administrative paperwork that goes with it. There's also been a lot of discussion on the EO listserv about this process, specifically with the dissolutions that came up with the inactive district issue that we worked on last year. And it's not very clear when it comes to dissolutions, and that's something they're looking for in legislative updates.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then another little wrinkle is, short of a dissolution, if there's a detachment,
Right.
then a negotiation would need to occur. And interestingly, the Revenue and Taxation Code provides that the county would negotiate on behalf of a district. So that's just kind of an oddity in the law.
How does this play into our policies and procedures? Is there anything we need to improve our policies and procedures on this, or is it already dictated in there?
It's pretty well dictated, but I think that there can be benefit. I think that we can improve upon our application. I think our application right now states that we have to have the resolutions of the tax share agreement submitted with the applications, but I think it's been, well, applicants have told us in the past that it's been difficult to initiate that negotiation process, so I think that if we obviously talk to them up front and let them know that this will be triggered and required, but if we accept the application in and then send notice to the county auditor and assessor, it might help have a clearer step in the process. Otherwise, you know, I don't know if how the county sees that, except that there might be some concern that an agency may come to them to start that process and then have it go no further, which would be a lot of work for the county up front.
Well, so our policies and procedures currently say the resolutions have to be submitted with the application?
Our application form says that. It's not set in our policies and procedures, but our form says that it has to be submitted.
Well, we should probably update the form to conform with state law, which seems to anticipate we would get the application, then notify the parties, now you can start negotiations. And of course, as we've seen, those negotiations can start without the application, but we shouldn't have something in there contrary to what state law provides.
So
And then if those negotiations don't work out, as you note in here, it does allow for an extension of that negotiation period.
So should we have a policy committee meeting to go over the form and make a recommendation back? What would you like to see? What is the direction?
I think it could just be administrative unless there's a conflict in our policies. We could just update the form, or staff could, I think.
Well, you're talking about a resolution, right? It has to come with the application. I was thinking more of less what, as it describes here, submit a study regarding a property tax. I just don't want to have somebody put up a $5,000 deposit do an application and then know that it's not gonna go anywhere because there's not gonna be any agreement on property taxes.
I'm not disagreeing with that, except if they want to submit the application thinking that'll kickstart negotiations,
No.
we should allow that, since state law seems to anticipate that the application would come in first. It doesn't mean that it can't be done the other way. I think we should just leave the option open.
I don't think it's a bad idea to let the Policy and Procedure Committee get together and come back with a recommendation.
Well, what I need to hear is a recommendation that the commission will all agree with. Commissioner Ward?
I don't have a dog in this fight. Either way is fine with me. I just want to see waste of money coming forward and then find out that it's not going to go anywhere. But Commissioner McCallan's right. It is state law, so keep it the way. Change the application.
I think we could just suggest that staff review policies and procedures, and if it's in line with state law, then just align the form with it.
Commissioner?
I was kind of going to agree with my colleagues here, but I think that, and I think maybe what Jerry was going after was that frustration that we saw here with the process, and especially with the smaller districts, that they come into this and I think they felt like they hit a brick wall with us, and the reality is it seemed like getting together was the issue. It wasn't this entity, but I think this is where they voiced their frustration, and so I don't want to add more frustration to the mix, but at the same time, I think it should be handled administratively and conform with state law.
I think if we follow on the suggestion that we send a copy of this procedure to all the districts, and so that people, in a sense, have a warning that they need to take care of tax sharing before they do anything else. I think just kind of letting people know what the procedures are is really helpful.
Well, I would think that a letter from the commission and those districts, whatever the agency that are interested in the full dialogue of what we have in our packet here, it's online and available, but I don't see putting staff through, especially not having a clerk right now, putting staff through all that work, but maybe just a letter restating, what state law requires and what LAFCO is going to do, I think is something we can do, but I don't know. Uma, what is your opinion?
I think we could certainly, it's fairly easy to send out, we could even send out the staff report to all of the agencies and just, as an informational. This is informational. It's, the commission discussed this, and this is the process that applicants have to go through to submit an application. And it doesn't apply to, it applies to every annexation, but for certain types of special districts, that is going to be a zero transfer of tax, and that is the agreement. So it doesn't necessarily have to, it isn't necessarily a big onerous thing that takes a lot of time for every application.
And I think if you're going to do it that way, you might also state that we're updating our actual application.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Well, only thing I was going to say is this is wonderful information, and if we could have it just as a standalone on our website as tax share agreements as opposed to buried in our minutes, I think it'd be helpful for a lot of the agencies. Then you could always refer people to the website. But I was really impressed with this. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I'd just like to
Anyone
see
else?
some agreements. Let's have some agreements after
Good
all these
luck.
years.
Good luck. Okay. Anything else on this agenda item? Okay, public expression. Anyone that would like to speak, please come forward. Seeing no one, we're back on our agenda items, and we're moving on to item number 7B, CALAFCO 2019 Conference and Business Meeting. Uma?
Thank you. So this item is to discuss the commissioner and participation in the 2019 CALAFCO Conference, which is to be held on October 30th to November 2nd in Sacramento at the Hyatt Regency. Usually there's about 300 commissioners and staff that attend these conferences. They have a LAFCO 101, which is excellent for first or second year, even commissioners, get a good overview of what LAFCO is. The CALAFCO conference program is in your agenda packets. I think it's on page 30 of the agenda packets. And there's a couple of, looks like they have some good sessions on water and MSRs. They're still finalizing that. So at our last commission meeting, we had Commissioners Brown, Ignacio, and Orth express interest. If we can nail down up to 4 commissioners to attend, then we could take advantage of the early bird rate, which would be great. The next portion of this item is that once we determine who will be attending the conference, is to select a voting delegate and alternate, and we have to have those names to CALAFCO by September 20th. As a member of CALAFCO, it's our responsibility to appoint a delegate and an alternate to participate. The meeting is held on Thursday morning of the conference. And this year we'll be voting on the new due structure, which is the third portion of this item. So CALAFCO, there's a little brief background on what CALAFCO is. They're a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to assisting LAFCOs through the whole state. They participate in legislative matters and are a watchdog for LAFCO as far as looking for legislation that with unfunded mandates or that undermines LAFCO's authority. So they have proposed a new dues structure, and that is in your agenda packet, both the letter from CALAFCO as well as the proposed dues structure and a Q&A also. Wanted to go through, let's see, in fiscal year 18-19, the CALAFCO dues were $925. Those did go up this year to $1,075. They are proposing a dues structure that has a base of $1,000 for all LAFCOs and then a per capita increment on top of that. The proposed dues for Mendocino would be $2,245 for the next fiscal year. So again, that will be up for vote during the annual business meeting at this conference. So
Well,
if we, go ahead.
I think we should take these each. We'll start with A. Thank you for, the introduction. I do have a lot to say about the due structure. But, and it's not just us. And I'll get into that at another time. And we do have one more meeting before our delegates would go. And, but I'd like to start with item A. Now, did you already pay registration?
I have cut a check for registration based on 4 commissioners and myself attending, but we can revise that if needed.
Okay. Because unfortunately, I had something come up
Okay.
that is very important on water issues, and I may not, I just have to pull back. Unfortunately, I really wanted to go, especially looking at the agenda. But water issues for Ukiah Valley is #1 on my plate, and very important. So it is what it is.
Okay.
So I won't be able to attend, and I'm sorry. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, if we don't have 4 others that would like to go, this may be the year I go.
Yay.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh. I think you'd really,
Get a lot out of it.
yeah, you'd get a lot out of it.
Shall I sign you up for 101, Commissioner McCallum?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, right.
Okay,
And I will be going as well. My calendar is open at that time period, so.
thank you.
Sir.
Retirement.
I can confirm also, I've cleared my calendar for those dates and made arrangements.
Great, thank you.
You're going?
Me?
Yes, aren't you?
I
Did, did you sign up?
No, I didn't sign up, that's why I was
It
wondering.
was just the three of us, and we were looking for a possible fourth.
I mean, there's several members that are not here today, and it would be really important, I think, for anyone that's new to LAFCO to attend. So I think we might want to double check with those people to make sure that if Mr. Huff or any of those folks want to go, that would be really important, I think.
Can we do one more check then?
Sure, Commissioner Huff is not able to attend. I did reach out to Commissioners Williams and Lee and have not heard back yet, so I will double check with them.
Okay. And you'll probably have to recut the check and two of us to sign it if anything changes like that.
I can follow up next week.
Okay.
If you get in a bind, I could probably clear things, but I wanted to give other people an opportunity since I've gone 2 years in a row, so.
Well, you can go a third year.
So,
I'll coordinate with you.
okay.
All right, moving on to B. Now, voting an alternate delegate we need, and you do have a role to play at the regional caucus, as well as any vote for the annual business meeting.
I would hope John would be willing to be the voting delegate, and I'd be glad to be his alternate.
Commissioner?
Actually, I'd be happy to defer to Commissioners Ignacio and Orth if they would like to fill those roles.
I don't know, because then we'd really be putting you on the map to attend.
Well, it's
Smart
whatever.
thinking, Commissioner Orth. So, gentlemen, let's get this done.
Yeah, my difficulty is that very early morning period is being older. I sometimes don't function as well at that hour. So being an alternate gives me a way to back out if I had to.
Well, in years past, we've always used our chair as the person. Now, you're the vice chair.
I know.
so-
That's why I tried to shuffle here. But at least I've explained why. I can do it if necessary. It's just I have to be careful.
To put my 2 cents in, whoever is our best negotiator in terms of the due structure should be the person who's the delegate.
That's why I shuffled it.
You know what,
Because I
I
can hear Carrie's concern, our chairman's concern, and you could kind of push that on to John quite easily, so.
if I can weigh in, I
Yes,
would
sir.
like to support Commissioner Orth's recommendation.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I move that John be the delegate and Commissioner Orth be the alternate.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call vote. Hang on. Does anyone from the public want to speak? No? Any other comments?
And I should correct that to be Commissioner McGowan.
We knew who you meant.
Yeah.
So, roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Sorry, John. Yes.
Commissioner McCallum,
Yes.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Chair Brown.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item C, and this is the proposed new dues structure for consideration. And I don't know how many of you went through it, but what really stuck out to me is I was looking at the different counties. We have 8 counties with populations under 20,000. And Then we've got 3 counties with population under 10,000. And then we have 3 counties, I mean, you look at Alpine, has 1,107 people. So what they did in this recommendation is basically the big counties, they gave a big break to.
Yep.
And these little tiny counties, I can't even imagine how Alpine, Modoc, and Sierra, they struggle with the small populations they have. But yet, they're gonna be asked to pay a base dues of $1,000. To me, that's just not fair, especially these little tiny counties. And what you're gonna find is they won't be able to afford it, and they'll drop out. And that is not good, because I think it's important for these smaller counties to receive that information, because most of them do not have the staff. I know my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors are working supervisors. I mean, they have to really run the county, because they have such few staff in the different areas.
Another observation, Madam Chair.
Yes.
If you look at Los Angeles County is the largest there in population. Their dues 10,662, but if apparently there's a cap, because if you look at Kern County, which it's clearly
Yes.
a smaller region, there's a cap in this table of 10,662. So you're absolutely right that the benefit is in the larger populations. Hopefully, the group of counties will get together and have a voice in their vote to make a correction to this schedule. And, you know, you mentioned a couple of counties, even Del Norte to the north
Oh,
is
yes.
taking on a huge responsibility if this passes.
But to set it up as $1,000 for everybody.
And have a cap
And then
limit.
cap the population. And I do realize many times, because I've seen this with at least one state organization, where LA County rules, basically, because of the amount that they pay. And staff is very, and the organization is very dependent on it.
Do you have any recommendations?
You know, I went over and read, I believe it was their minutes, and it just didn't make sense to me. I think our recommendation should come at the next meeting. I don't know, I will see my colleagues at the Rural Counties Association annual meeting, and I do want to engage with them to see what they think about this. And maybe the rural caucus, because certainly it's the rural counties that are being hit the most on this. Yes.
In reading the minutes, I see nothing wrong with the old way they did it, where they make most of their money at the conference. And I mean, I didn't see any justification for the change of wanting to get it in dues rather than in the conference amount of money they collect.
I should look at the directors too and find out what county supervisors sit on their board of directors, and maybe give them a phone call and discuss it with them. And it probably wouldn't hurt to call a colleague from a couple of the big counties to see what they're thinking.
He was,
Oh, I'm sorry.
To Uma, you gave us what we were paying last year, which would be half of what's recommended, correct? Do you have the data do you have a similar table that you provided here for what's currently being collected? I mean, I'd be curious to know what LA, Alameda, and such are paying right now. Do we have access to that?
We do. We have a list from last year, and I can send that out to the commissioners, and we can include this on the agenda for discussion next time.
I think it would be good background for me to even attempt a recommendation.
if I remember from the meeting last year, that the rationale, which I kind of agree that they did maybe need to raise the rates, but not like this, that they wanted stability, because having to wait for, hoping that the conference was going to kind of bail out the organization was, I guess,
Exactly.
troubling for them. And they, and I said you had to reach a kind of a happy balance, seemed to be what, I think everybody understood there, that, yeah, things need to go up, but I agree with you that this seems, the folks that could little afford to pay are the ones that are being asked to pay more, and the folks that can't afford to pay have a cap.
Right. And the California Special Districts, that is the 1,675 is what we pay.
I believe that's right, yeah.
Yes.
Reading through the material, so the population cap is 700,000. So there's 9+ million folks in LA that are not contributing based on this formula. Just kind of an illustration of the disproportionality that we're all talking about.
Yeah, that, well, and that was their break. They just capped it at a certain population.
And, you know, even to have the base dues be the same for every county. And that might be the current structure, Uma, but is that really equitable? You know, they ultimately say, and there were 11 different options considered, and then they settled on this one, and they say this is the most equitable.
And you go, huh?
But do you know, is it currently each pays the same base rate?
I believe there's a rural rate, like a medium, and then there's a high population rate, and I'll have to research that some more to see what that breakdown
Because
is.
that would certainly be more equitable than the one-size-fits-all that rural counties so often get shouldered with.
Yes.
I know if they considered 11 different ways to do this, I would think just in a one-year surcharge by population, just to have a operational capital reserve would resolve their, quote, angst over having enough money and waiting for the conference for that money to come in, and it would be 1 year and done, because then they would just continue to keep that reserve. I mean, it's basically a cash flow issue when you get an organization saying we're worried about how much cash comes in at a given time. So it seems like they've made the problem larger than it really is.
Sounds like you two have it figured out for us next at the
So maybe we want to move it forward, or do we want to gather more information
Let's
first?
gather more information and talk about it next meeting.
Okay. So we'll have it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
And we have our voting member and our alternate voting member to the conference. So anything else? Anything from the public? Seeing no one come forward? Okay. We'll move forward on the agenda to item 8. And we will go with 8A, work plan, current and future proposals. And it was a written document within our packet.
This is on page 41 of our agenda packet. We did receive a new application for a pre-application consultation request from Russian River Flood Control District to explore some options under LAFCO law for providing water to the Redwood Valley County Water District under a purchase agreement. No changes to the applications on hold. On page 42, there's an update to the work plan portion. We did complete the Brook Trails Township Community Services District MSR and SOI update. For fiscal year 2019-20, we have County Service Area 3, Mendocino City Community Services District, and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. We had an initial meeting with county staff to kick off the data collection for CSA 3, and we are drafting the request for information for Ukiah Valley Sanitation District and the Mendocino City CSD. So those have all been initiated at this point.
questions, Commissioner?
Well, just of some interest is the hospital district on the coast is going through some revolutions right now, in which they may be taken over by Adventist. And one of the parties involved stated that if that happened, then the hospital district might only encumber a portion of the recent bond approval and change just to support their ambulance service because Adventist would be operating the hospital. So there's some movement there, and I would at least make the applicant aware that there might be some reasons to hold off for a period, but whether they wish to do so or not. There's that one. And then I note part of the CALAFCO conference is how LAFCOs are involved in responding to natural or people-caused emergencies. And I just wonder if the Russian River flood control proposal with Redwood Valley would somehow come under a portion of that. I'm just bringing that up as part of the future discussion, whether there's because they lost, 400 homes in Redwood Valley, and the water system was basically destroyed. So there might be some applications.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Uma, could you give me a little more background on the Moore annexation? Looks like there's been some things happening there. What's going on?
For, I would say, about 6 months now, he's been, Mr. Morris has called a number of times to try to initiate the application again. I have let him know each time that before we can move further, we need to have a deposit to cover the outstanding amount due, as well as to bill staff time against. The other thing that we need to do is connect with county planning staff regarding the application, because the application back in can't remember what year it was now, 2009 originally, had been, part of it had been a general plan amendment, and that part was finally denied by the Board of Supervisors earlier this year. So it's unclear what the application, what he's putting forward at this point. So I have let him know this in writing and on the phone, and that's
So you
as
don't
much as
know
I-
what he's trying to revise for the project application then?
What he is saying is that he would like to move forward with development at the current allowed density, which is an inn site of
Okay.
I think it's a 20-unit inn. But again, I need clarification from the county what his actual development plans are. And in order to initiate that, I have told him I needed a deposit.
How does he feel about the
He's not
$610?
very happy.
He's not very happy. He knows he owes it.
He's owed it for a long time.
Yeah, without interest.
He would like to see it move forward and has been frustrated at the, I guess, the status of it.
Has there been any communication with him in the last month?
Not in the last month, no.
Okay.
So this annexation we won't get in any tax sharing agreements with this one?
Most likely not. Usually when it's a water or a wastewater
So
district,
this one's not,
those are
doesn't apply.
service only, or service fee only.
Okay, anyone else? Any questions? Okay. So, moving forward, we have correspondence and the letter of the Strategic Growth Council grant application. Any comment?
Yeah, on the minutes, it said that there'd be 120 hours of reimbursable hours, but it looks like there's 142 now, including the 40.
That includes the 40 hours of in-kind match, so it would be 102 of labor hours. She had an incorrect hourly rate for me, so it reduced the number of hours.
The letter itself says it's inclusive to the 142, right?
Agrees to commit 142 labor hours, which includes 40 hours of in-kind match time.
So it'd be only, all right.
And that match time will be, can be calculated on, other work that we are already doing, so it wouldn't be any above time.
The difference doesn't really matter.
Okay, moving on to 8C, Executive Officers Report.
Thank you. We did have one other item of correspondence, and I'll just include that in the
Oh, okay.
Executive Officer's Report. We did receive notice from the State Controller's Office that two districts under LAFCO jurisdiction have not submitted their annual financial reports and requesting our assistance in following up with them. They noted Anderson Valley Cemetery District failed to file their report, and the Mendocino Coast Hospital District filed a non-compliant report. They also notified us that the North Coast Railroad Authority was non-compliant, but since that's not a LAFCO jurisdiction, we don't need to worry about that one.
Okay, McCowan.
To move on, we talked about the Pacific Internet email outages last month. I did reach out to them, and we received the month of July free as far as email service. So that was a $15 credit towards next year's bill.
$15 is $15.
That's right. It's the principle of it.
Even if it costs $40 to get it.
So we are researching options, and we'll bring that forward to the commission at the next meeting. Staff attended the City of Ukiah's workshop on the land use policy directives. That was held on August 27th. At that meeting, city staff requested and received directive from the City Council to pursue reaffirming the 1984 sphere of influence with the intent of preserving the ag and open space lands. I did speak to the item, noting our policies on ag preservation and open space that direct the commission to discourage inclusion of those areas from our spheres. In particular, noting policy 1.2, which is the 8th and 9th general policies, which speak to that, as well as policy 9.13, our agricultural and open space land, and policy 10.1.7, which talks about excluding those areas from city spheres of influence. I also noted our policy regarding the areas of interest, which may be an option for the city to consider in addressing those areas that they wish to have increased coordination with the county on. We sent out notices regarding the commission selection of an audit firm, and I've been working on the year-end financials, and we'll work with Treasurer Ward on that. We received a Public Records Act request from a law firm in Fort Bragg to find information about the formation and boundary changes to the Mendocino City CSD. And also want to note that as the alternate public member, Commissioner Rosenberg's term ends at the end of this year. So we'll be sending out the notice of availability mid-month this month, and we'll bring that forward as a informational item next time as well. And also to give a brief clerk update, we have interviewed about 9 people now, and we're scheduling second interviews, so hopefully we're getting close.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Seeing none, we'll move on to 8D. And this is committee reports. And I don't think any of the committees, including the executive committee, have met. So we will move on to 8E. And I do have a question. Uma, your contract runs from when to when?
So there's no end date on it. So it is until either party is wishes to terminate it, basically.
Because Commissioner Ward asked about the certificate of insurance.
I received it.
And, yes, but when is your renewal on that?
The certificates of insurance?
Is it a calendar year?
It is not a calendar year. My insurance renews, like, I think, and it's in April of every year. And so
Okay.
I just need to remember to request a new insurance certificate every year.
Yeah, and my thought was, we need to put that in process, because hopefully you're not gonna change for a while. But, the commission may, have changing members, and I think it should be included in some type of a procedure. Maybe it's the yearly evaluation, I'm not sure. And your last evaluation was?
We did not do one last year, so I believe well, we did one last year, but we have not done one this year yet.
Okay. I was thinking it was in the fall that we did it last year.
I think so.
Yes. So, but I just felt it was important to get the certificate of insurance included somewhere. So it's a checkoff, whether it's during our budget process or whatever, that we have that checkoff, so it doesn't get lost as we move into the future. And then I would like to start the process for evaluation of our executive officer. Anyone have comment?
Well, what would be the best time? Obviously, it expires in April of 2020. Is there a better month that she can make it any month she wants, since her term there's no expiration date?
Right.
She can make it
So you're talking
April to
certificate
June.
of
Yeah,
insurance.
certificate, yeah.
Okay.
Is there a better date that we might be able to,
You know, it could change with EOs.
you want to look at it when we look at our budget?
That's what I'm thinking, is to add it into that process,
Okay.
or one of our process. Maybe it's,
We usually look at it in March, the budget. We can go March to March. Or the next year, we can go from April to March.
it would just be good to have that check off.
Sure.
Because as commissioners change and staff may change, just to have that somewhere, so it's a check off.
Yeah, I just caught it because I didn't have the current contract, and I was looking at the certificate, and it expired in April. But she came through and gave us a new one. But I think March to March will be fine.
Okay, I see everyone agreeing. And then, as the chair, I'll start the process for evaluation. And we'll go forward. Then I had one more item, and that was on AB 1304. Do we know where that piece of legislation is? And thank you for including.
Sure. I'm not sure where it is in process, so I will have to look into that, and then I can email that to you so that you're aware, if you have trips.
And, because I think this has to do with the Round Valley issue, and nobody moved forward with it, but I think there's also other places in the state, at least with our legal counsel, and he was going to do that research.
That
And
was
then-
about 3 years ago.
yeah, and backed out, but when I saw this legislation, I just thought, okay, yeah, what does this mean? So, Commissioner?
Well, the previous issue, this is pretty specific to a water supply contract. The previous issue had to do with, by what authority do we include tribal lands within a sphere of influence, I think.
I think that had to do with, that was it, but still, you don't know how legislation will change as it goes through its process. And we were well aware that our legal counsel in some other counties, questions had come up to that effect.
And I think it'd be great to get that information if it's out there, because I don't know that we've ever had that resolved.
No, we haven't. Yes, Carol?
My memory says that there was an overall, water district wanted overall policy, influence on the entire valley, Covelo Valley, and the tribal folks did not necessarily were not comfortable with that, and that we put on an hold about 3 years ago, maybe more, and it was under, I believe the tribal people were going to look at it, and that sort of just died.
Well, I think there were several counties with the same question.
I'm sure there must be,
Yes,
because.
and when we went to our legal counsel, he indicated that. But I think they were a little bit different. But I think John's correct, and you're absolutely correct as well, about sovereign nation.
Well, I think the
And
the
control.
Native people did not want to give any authority over their water to anybody else. And I can understand that. But they were trying to do conservation of the water system in that Covelo Valley. So there needed to be some trust involved, and nobody seemed to want to proceed with that.
I understand our council was looking at this on behalf of other LAFCOs too.
Yes.
And he was
It was
gonna,
a
we were gonna
shared-
share the expense. I think it'd be worth a phone call to see if he's made any progress on this
I
item.
think he stopped.
Yeah, I remember this came up about a year ago,
Previously,
and so I
yeah.
checked with him, and he had gotten to a certain point in his research, and the other counties had backed out, so he put it on hold to see if we wanted him to proceed, he could, but
us,
it's a lot of research into federal and federal regulations and rights, and it was going to take quite a bit more time.
Yes.
We might just ask for an update on what had he learned to the point where he, quit.
Yeah. I think it's still an important situation or important issue, whether we pay for it or other LAFCOs or whatever, but we need to know how to proceed. We have a
Well-
lot of American Indian reservations here.
Yes, we do, and, this is the only time it's come up, because I believe the other reservations work with the water district, and the water district does supply them, but I know some have wells as well. And I think this was an unusual situation up in Round Valley.
We
Yes,
could also communicate with the tribe and find out if they've made any, they might have done some research as well.
well, maybe we start with the water district. We have no, what the tribe is indicating is they want no authority over their sovereign land. So it would be the water district that we would communicate with. And
Yeah,
maybe they
might have
did,
done research as well, so,
Yeah.
we don't know.
My understanding is they don't provide water service, but they are a conservation, basically a water conservation and watershed improvement district. Is that the issue?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was the issue. So it was water conservation, it wasn't about service at all.
but I was just bringing those points up. It's very different.
Yeah,
They're the only ones, the only tribe that I know of that has this conflict.
Okay.
Well, it will come forward, I think, in the future. Now or 10 years from now, we should at least know what direction to go on it.
Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on your first question with AB 1304, I just did a quick check at the state here, and it looks like it was set for first hearing in June, but canceled at the request of the author.
Oh, okay.
So-
So it's tabled.
Yeah, it's tabled.
Okay. I just worry sometimes when you see these bills, you never know
Right.
how something's going to come out. I remember on AB 2121, it was an entirely different bill. It's been a whole bunch of years ago, but entirely different bill. And it ended up being totally gutted of the language. It was pulled. Final 5 hours. of the legislature's session for the second year, and totally reworded, no public hearings, no nothing, and it brought some pretty horrific requirements and regulation to in-stream flows throughout the state of California with no hearings. So it's just what they do.
Well, hopefully the Senate Commission on Natural Resources and Water will do something that'll help us.
But anyway, I'll stop my storytelling. Okay. Any other committee reports? Commissioner reports? Seeing none, moving on to CALAFCO business and legislative report. I guess I brought up AB 1304 in the wrong place. Uma?
I think that was it. There's just the CALAFCO update on the legislative matters starts on page 45 of your agenda packet, and I'd be happy to follow up on any of them if you have questions. Or 44 of your packet. I understand that there is some legislation that, well, there was legislation that was passed, and I don't remember the number, that the State Water Board can require failing water districts to consolidate, and I understand there's legislation that has either just been passed or pending regarding similar for wastewater districts. So that's something of interest for us to be aware of.
Interesting. Yeah, that's what you have to watch.
It's created some interesting situations with some LAFCOs that have had to require extensions of service over long distances that creates these islands of service, essentially. So.
All righty. I'm going to not adjourn until I see we have City of Ukiah here. Representatives, would you like to speak at all? Nope. Nope. Okay. All righty. Thank you for being here, and no other business. Oh my gosh. We'll adjourn. Thank you.